Okay, well, good afternoon, members, and welcome back to this room.
You love it, Joe.
Okay, let's go straight in with the Cambridgeshire Police and Crime Panel confirmation hearing, and we'll go to agenda item number 1, which is apologies for absence. And we have Gemma George with us this afternoon. Welcome, Gemma.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Chair. We have apologies this afternoon from Councillor Max Maguire, Councillor David Oliver, Councillor Andy Pearson, Councillor Michael Shellings, Councillor Ed Murphy and Councillor James Lillis. Thank you.
Okay, any declarations of interest? We have a substitute as well for this meeting.
Councillor Oliver.
Councillor Oliver.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Any declarations of interest from anybody? I'm assuming not. Okay. So agenda item 3 is the proposed appointment of the Cambridgeshire Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner. And welcome to this confirmation hearing. I'm Ben Shelton, the chairperson for this police and crime panel. This confirmation hearing is being held in order to consider the proposed appointment to the position of Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner. I would like to give a warm welcome to the candidate, Andy Coles, and also members of the public who are here today, as well as the Commissioner and his officers. During the course of this hearing, we hope to gain further information from the candidate on how you meet the criteria for the post and your suitability for the role. We will ask you some questions in order to do this. Members are reminded that this is a confirmation hearing, and as such, panel members are not being asked to rerun a selection panel interview, but to ensure themselves that the applicant's professional competence and personal independence for the role has been adequately proven, and that the Police and Crime panel can properly endorse the Commissioner's proposal for the position of the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner. Matters concerning the terms and conditions of service of the appointment are not within the remit of this confirmation hearing. Following any questions that we have to ask, we ask you to look at, and in accordance with Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, we will then deliberate and determine a recommendation to the Commissioner. With the panel's consent, the press and public will be excluded from our deliberations, as there will be further discussions about your suitability for the role. We will advise the Commissioner of our recommendation tomorrow and copy you, Andy, into this notice. It will be for the Commissioner to decide whether to accept or reject our recommendation. A full report and summary of the reasons for our recommendation will be published within 5 working days of this meeting. I would like to therefore ask the candidate, Andy Coles, if he would like to come up to the table. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair.
Are there any questions that you would like to ask the panel on the process this afternoon?
None from me, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed. So what we will do now is that we will ask questions from panel members to you as the candidates, and I will start off with the first question, which is, what do you think the role of the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner should be, and what qualities can you offer which makes you suitable for this position?
Well, thank you very much, and it's a real delight to be able to come here to attend this confirmation hearing. what do I bring, or rather, what is the role of the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner, and what do I bring? I take as the first question. The most important thing that I can bring is to support the Police and Crime Commissioner in the work that he intends to do. The role of Police and Crime Commissioner is an enormously responsible and growing role. The difficulty of geography in Cambridgeshire in particular means that trying to cover the areas and meeting local people is a challenge if you're just a single person, so I can support the Police and Crime Commissioner in that. There are also certain areas, I'm a Peterborough councillor, so I'm very familiar with what's happening here, and I think if you were to ask local residents about the representation of the Police and Crime Commissioner within Peterborough, it's not been as visible as perhaps they would like. One of the guarantees I can give is that I can provide that. I suppose beyond that, I've had 30 years of service in the Met. I've worked in a huge number of different areas, both in court policing and within specialist roles. And I've dealt with some of them, the largest, most major incidents, as well as dealing with very local community issues as a home beat or community bobby back in the 1980s in London. So I do understand the policing business really well. However, I've never been involved in Cambridgeshire. I don't have any connections with the force, so I'm able to bring a level of remoteness, if you like, to the force itself. I can understand policing without feeling in any way that I'm committed to the force and will need to support the force, or be in any way influenced by my policing background. And for those of us that have worked in the Metropolitan Police, whenever you go out to another force, you are universally hated, so it's fine. I completely can cope with the idea that I'm going to be asking difficult questions of another force, and I may be not exactly received with open arms when I ask certain questions, so I can maintain that level of independence.
Okay, thank you very much. The second question is coming from Councillor Cllr.
Thank you. Good afternoon to you, Mr. Coles. What experience or skills do you think will enable you to work with the Commissioner in delivering his three key priorities?
I think because I come from the City Councillor position and I'm working with local communities, I can very much concentrate on the level of information that we can put across to communities and how we can receive information from them. So being open, present and able to receive information from communities is, I think, probably one of the most important priorities of the Police and Crime Commissioner, to address local concerns and take it back to the force. I think also being a critical friend of the force and being able to challenge the Chief Constable in his actions is incredibly important. I can really support that because of my background, I suppose, and I can help very much in looking at the details of particular policing operations and how we can support them or challenge them. I suppose the other issues around budgeting, and I have experience of dealing with budgets as a chair of governors at the school, of a member of the Multi-Academy Trust on the Audit Committee, and working with the budget here at the Council. So in terms of looking at the finances, I'm pretty well qualified in that area.
Okay, thank you very much. Question 3 comes from Councillor Giles, please.
Good afternoon. What do you believe should be the relationship between the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner and the Police and Crime Panel? And how would you seek to develop that relationship?
Yes, thank you for that question. It's one close to my heart, as I was formerly Vice Chair of this panel and joined the panel last year for the first time when I was first elected. If I'm honest, I was quite frustrated because I'm used to having a scrutiny role, and I was expecting maybe to be a bit more involved. I was asking impertinent questions all the time. And from my perspective now, in my hopefully in my position as Deputy PCC, I would like to see much more involvement. One of the ideas I had, for example, was to make sure that the Police and Crime Panel, if they want to ask particular questions of a particular specialist area of policing, that should be arranged so that while it's not reflecting on analysis of the Police and Crime Commissioner and the staff, it gives you an opportunity to ask questions about an area of policing. We went to a number of meetings as well. There was one in Nottingham last year, I remember, where this view of frustration with the process because of the way in which the PCP process was sort of cobbled together, really, and it wasn't as we would like in terms of scrutiny within councils. Many areas said that there was a great frustration about that. And we've started just this morning, I understand, with the Chief Constable present for the first time, to be able to ask questions of an operational nature, and that I think should continue. It shouldn't be every meeting, of course, but it's only right and proper that you have the opportunity to ask the questions of much more broadly than purely what the Police and Crime Commissioner are doing. Nevertheless, I understand that the role of the PCP is to examine the PCC's work and not operational policing, but you can't really divorce the one from the other if we're being entirely realistic about this.
Okay. You mentioned in your second question, and the question here is, can you demonstrate a time when you have been involved or engaged with stakeholders to ensure that they've been able to influence policing and crime issues? And I'm thinking in particular something that you wrote in your resume, which I'm not going to give you a clue about. See if you can pick that one out.
Okay, I'll try. I'll give you a better example because yesterday I was involved in a panel with a whole group of local residents in my ward who have been very concerned about a sudden spike in serious crime in the area. They hadn't had the opportunity to talk with local policing staff because the neighbourhood panels that were in place had been removed because of policing pressures. We were able to get 14 people together. We discussed a whole range of things. It was not just policing, but it was also to do with council provision of various services. And because of my connection with the local community, I was able to hear from the chair of a community association, from someone who ran a Facebook page that related to a particular community group, to someone, well, I think 5 people resident in one road where there was a particular problem. So that worked extremely well. I mean, if I'm trying to identify in my personal statement I have in front of me where it was.
Can I give you
a little clue would be really helpful,
right,
thank you.
It involves young people.
Right.
You're involved with young people.
Oh, no, I'm with you now. Yes, Chair of Families First Peterborough is I think, where we're going. But I'm also Chair of Governors of a school that has been in pretty serious difficulty. And we've been, well, I'm delighted we're out of special measures and we're now moving forwards and improving, but the school has got its particular challenges. And we have a police officer based within the school to deal with the particular problems we have. There are other areas where I've been involved directly with young people. And just recently, I've been a volunteer in another school where I've taken children and young people abroad and been involved in them developing their French language learning. I have connections probably around about, I don't know, 2,000, 3,000 young people involved in various areas that I'm connected with. I run a community centre, a number of youth activities taking place there, including a very useful and effective role for someone who runs a martial arts group, where a lot of younger children who are in difficulties learn how to behave and how to gain respect.
Okay, thank you very much, and we will move on to question number 5. Councillor, speak please.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome, Andy. Given the independence of the PCC role and his responsibility to the electorate, what examples can you give us of how you have had to be accountable for the delivery of a particular policy to the general public?
Yes, it's difficult to come up with a specific one. I'm just thinking as lead member for Children's Services last year, there were a number of policy changes that we were looking at delivering, and I suppose the well, you will know because we sit on it together, the parenting panel about how that's developed and changed. That we recognised it wasn't working very well, the Ofsted report wasn't great, and as a result we've improved its engagement with members. When it comes to the public itself, I think probably the best example for me would be when I was chair of Community Action Peterborough, which was an umbrella group of 55 community associations in Peterborough. We were very much challenged with the way the council were dealing with properties, that the financial situation was quite desperate. A number of the halls were looking that they might have to close, so we had to come together with different parts of those management committees and identify the right council people to talk to try to improve things. And that's been quite a long process, and I don't think actually it's concluded yet, but we have worked through some very difficult problems there.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for that, and Councillor question number 9, if that's okay. I haven't told you about it yet, Councillor Howe, but question number 9 is yours.
So what skills can you offer to this role that will help ensure that the substantial changes or decisions taken by the PCC are communicated effectively to staff and partners?
Thank you for the question. I think it's like putting the shoe on the other foot, really. Having been a member of staff and had things done to me when I was working in policing, the necessity of having decent communication was really important. It wasn't always there for staff. I was lucky to be elected as a Federation representative for inspectors and chief inspectors in specialist operations. And that was when I really understood how best to communicate, which was you try and persuade the leadership to communicate effectively, and when they don't, you force it by pushing hard enough, appropriately, to make sure that it happens. And it depends where the communication is that you're looking to improve, whether it's with the chief officer to the staff, or whether it's the policies and procedures of the PCC. I think the pressures are slightly different there.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Edward.
Thank you, Chair. You touched on the fact that you have some experience with budgeting. Obviously, this is a much bigger budget, and it's a shrinking budget. How do you feel about that challenge, and can you sort of draw upon any particular experience or expertise that can assist the Commissioner in this?
Well, to be fair, the Compton Academy Trust budget is 98.6 million, so it's not hugely different. But yes, I have dealt with smaller budgets as well, in 9, 10 million, 17 million, 20 million, that sort of size. If I'm brutally frank, as long as one number's smaller than the other, you're okay.
Okay. Councillor Bainton, put you down for a question.
I'll do 14.
It's a question 8. What experience?
Well, I'll go back to 8 and then I'll come back
Yes.
to 3. I think you've more or less covered this though. Thank you for coming, Andy. It's good to see you again.
Without that, I'm nobody. Would you like to explain what experience you can bring to this role to ensure that the Commissioner takes into account the needs of diverse and hard-to-reach communities across Cambridgeshire?
Thank you very much for the question. It's so important. We've just seen recently with the leaflets going out to members of the parish community in Huntingdon. Before that, we had similar objectionable leaflets going out in Central Ward here in Peterborough. I've had experience myself in dealing with diversity and equality matters within policing, in trying to improve female recruitment. Well, you can see I'm not female, and yet I had that responsibility because there were insufficient numbers of female staff joining specialist operations. I was successful. I got 70% increase in recruitment, and it required dealing with things in a correct way to deal with diversity. I'm very interested to make sure that I represent the minority communities that we live in, and I live right within a community of some 450 people who originate from Kashmir, and I've been able to represent them locally in my community association. I've worked with a whole variety of other communities, older people, young people, and different ethnicities. I've also been involved, and I can go way back here to the Gay London Policing Project, way back in the 90s, when I was the direct link between gay and lesbian community who were suffering from a variety of attacks at the time, and I was the officer that connected with them. So hopefully I've had a decent amount of experience there, and it's one of those really important things that I have a particular interest in making sure that when minorities are trying to address problems with what are figures in authority, that they have access.
Thank you. Can we jump to 14 now?
Yeah, go for it.
We'll move around a bit here. We're swinging across the different topic. Having spent most of all of your working paid life in the Metropolitan Police, how would you ensure that you can remain independent of the organisation that you were enculturated with for all that time, all those formative years of your life?
Well, I think you will have to hold me to account on that to make sure, obviously. I think my view is that I've spent a decent time away from policing since 2012, working with local communities. I've chaired a couple of our panel meetings where local communities talk to the police. I'm very happy, you have to ask people who've been there, but I was very happy to challenge the delivery of a policing service locally. And I refer back to my rather flippant remark, but it is true, when you work in the Met, and people have a certain resistance to you when you come out. I was working on national roles and having to come out to talk to other forces. And there is a detachment between forces, so it is quite natural that there's natural competition and natural distrust and even cynicism between forces. It's just the way the culture works. So I don't see that's a problem. I will definitely be independent from Cambridgeshire.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you provide an example which demonstrates your ability to strategically plan and collaborate with partner agencies?
I can give you several examples. Probably the latest one was the permanency service within Peterborough City Council, where we're looking to work with a third sector agency to deliver a whole adoption and fostering service, and that's been a very successful transition. Not completed yet, but it's very much on the way, and of course now I'm no longer a lead member, I'm no longer involved in it, but I was delighted to be involved in a whole period of change there, working with the organisations involved, with our foster carers and with the staff to make sure that we could come up with a suitable solution which is going to save in the region of 1.4 million in the budget, which will then be ploughed straight back into education and support for foster parents. So it was a real win-win actually, and it was a very successful negotiation between the council and the third party organisation.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going on to question number 10, Councillor Callum.
How will you work with the PCC to ensure openness and transparency in the working of the PCC office in the public's perception?
Yes, thank you. I'm absolutely, that's the way I'm made. I absolutely insist on openness, transparency, and maybe that's from my experience of policing, but you cannot and should not try and hide things from people. I'm absolutely committed to making sure that communication is effective. I think one of the areas that we're looking to develop, if you confirm in the post, I'll be delighted to take it on, which is to make sure that when someone has done something, it's then reported back accurately. And I think so many times, certainly in policing, operational demands take over, and it's always difficult to report back. And there's always this difficulty of ensuring people get the answer at the end of the process. It's absolutely imperative in terms of openness that we always give a response when we can. And I don't think that's been particularly successful throughout policing for many years, actually. That's one area that I would say I can improve it very much. When it comes to individuals asking questions of the PCC's office, the same rules will apply, and I intend to be a champion for openness.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to a question from Councillor Giles, number 11.
You're obviously used to dealing with challenges. What do you foresee as the challenge for the next 2 or 3 years?
Could I ask what for policing, for the PCC's office?
In your role.
In my role?
Yeah.
I think the growth of additional demands without an increase in the budget is always going to be a challenge. I think refocusing and redeveloping the role of the PCC over time, with the potential for other roles to come in from Ministry of Justice roles or fire as well. These are not surprises, these are all out there as potential changes with the role will increase the amount of work that will come in. So I see that being able to establish a growth in activity in all sorts of different areas and supporting that without a large increase in budget.
Okay, moving on to a question from Councillor Howell, please.
At the end of your term in office, how will we know whether you've been successful, and what criteria should we judge your contribution?
Well, hopefully you'll hold me to account as firmly as any form of scrutiny should on this panel. I'm very happy to take questions. I'm very happy to be challenged on decisions that take place. And bear in mind that probably the decisions won't be mine, but I'll be supporting the Police and Crime Commissioner in it. If you want to measure me on a particular thing, like the number of public engagements, for example, then I'd be very happy to report that if that's what you wish. If you want to ask about questions of value for money, well, that's very difficult to say, but what I have already given commitment to is that if I'm required to work, I will work, and it doesn't matter if that's 5 days a week, I will do what's required.
Okay, thank you for that. And we'll move on to a question from Councillor Bisbee.
Thank you, Chair. Can you explain your understanding of the terms operational independence and also personal independence, and how do these apply to the relationship between the OPCC and the Chief Constable, and how the separation of powers should be maintained?
I think I understand between operational and independence. There's no way that I'll try and influence any form of operational policing. That's entirely wrong. I think when it comes to personal independence, if you mean political independence, is that I will be a champion for the public and a voice for the public. And I will be particularly a voice for victims as well. And it doesn't matter what the background of the person or their political persuasion, I will be completely independent when it comes to resolving their particular problems, just as any councillor would be when you're dealing with complaints and issues from the local residents.
Okay, thank you very much. And Edward Lee, please.
Thank you, Chair. You touched on the amount of time you're going to give. Now, I understand from the papers that you will be paid for 2 or 3. I don't know if there's any clarity, you can provide any clarity on that. But I suppose the question is how are you going to, is this going to be your first priority and you will fit other things around it? And given that part of your job will be covering meetings and so on across the county, there's going to be a lot of travelling time and you're going to have to fit in with other people's diary dates and so on. Could you just perhaps just elaborate a little on how you will structure the job, the time around the job?
Yes, certainly. Well, it's 50% of the time, if you like, so it's either 2.5 days, 2 or 3, depending, but that's just to give you guidance. It's unusual for me not to work. This sounds bizarre, but having been a DI in counter-terrorism for some time, I never had a life for probably 6 years when I was on call all the time, working 18-hour days, 7 days a week. It's not unusual. When 7/7 and 21/7 happened, I didn't go home for 6 weeks. So I'm quite happy to deal with things as they come up, and it's quite natural. I've lived that life. Being a councillor as well, you have to just arrange to appear to do things as and when you can with times that suit people that want to see you. So very often it's evening work and weekend work, and I see that as entirely part of the role. Also, I'm not taking any particular cabinet role within the council here. I'm not taking part in any scrutiny committees, so I'm acting as a ward councillor, and then I'm acting as the deputy PCC. I am not going to be pulled away. I mean, you will have seen from my resume, I've got several unremunerated voluntary roles. I will look and see if I can continue those as we go through. But the answer is, who pays the piper gets the tune. That's not correct, is it? I can never remember that. Plays the tune, that's right. So, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, this is the most important role, and it fits my skill set so brilliantly that I'm going to do this as my main role, my main paid role, and then I'm councillor for my ward. I'll be looking after my ward, and then I will look after the voluntary sector areas that I cover as a volunteer.
Okay, thank you for that. And following on from the answer you've given, and given your activities in your day-to-day life, what do you think you could bring from there to benefit the work of the Commissioner's Office?
I think when it comes to Peterborough, I'm pretty well connected with a whole variety of third sector and voluntary organisations, and having worked for a time in Peterborough Council Voluntary Service, I was very familiar with a number of the slightly larger and more active local charities here that directly will have an impact on the sort of work that the police are doing in terms of victim support particularly. I think also, being a council, you know exactly what's going on in the local area, and local residents are very happy to tell you what's bothering them. Just last night, the big issues were drug dealing in 3 streets, which I didn't know about, so I can deal with that. With speeding down one street, with someone on a motorcycle who was misbehaving, which I take a particularly dim view, about being a proper motorcyclist, if I can use that term. So I think that local connection is probably the most useful thing I can bring.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm out of the standard set questions. So any other panel members got any questions that they would like to ask the candidate?
Thank you.
Councillor Bajan.
We've been here before, but I'd like to do it again. How, Andy, would you respond to a perception that asks, given that the police service seeks to employ a wide range of people, particularly from different genders, ethnicities, and is it not a bad example for the Deputy Commissioner to be another white middle-class man?
Yeah, what you didn't say was disabled white middle-class male, but I do sort of qualify if you're looking for a diversity label. But my honest answer is that the skills I've got are pretty good, actually. I don't know very many other people that have the level of experience I've had within policing and can bring it to an oversight role. I'm just looking around this committee and I'm wondering how many others who are not white middle-class males. Let's not talk about class here because that could offend somebody. But simple matter is, I think I'm the best candidate for the job. I have experience within diversity. I know and I can communicate with a whole variety of minorities. If there was an alternate candidate who had my levels of experience and knowledge and came with a particular minority background, then hopefully they will be presented in front of you as an alternative candidate.
Okay, I'm glad we're not going down the middle-age road because I have something to say about that. But anyway, Councillor Bajan, did you want to come back as a
I wouldn't mind just
supplementary?
teasing that a bit more if I might. I'm talking here about a police service that is openly trying to recruit from diverse groups. And you are at the figurehead now, or if confirmed, will be at the figurehead. So I think that your experiences may well cover a whole range of things, but I think that there is something difficult and that we should be acknowledging. And I'm disappointed that Jason didn't acknowledge that we should have perhaps had a different person in this role in regards to providing that mix that the police service itself tries to provide.
Okay, just before you answer that, I'm just going to ask the legal officer to comment.
Thank you. If I could remind the panel that this is in relation to the applicant's professional competence and personal independence, so questions could be related to the candidate in that way, and with that in mind. Thank you.
Okay, so before I go on to Edward Lee, I think that question just needs slightly revising.
I'll let you go, I've said it.
Okay, all right. Edward Lee.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose it really, you would have to accept that being who you are, just as it would be for me. There will be some parts of the community who will find it difficult to approach you. They'll find you unapproachable. Whether it's a young Muslim woman or someone from a traveller community or whatever, they will have their own preconceptions of who you are and what you stand for. And part of the role that's being set out for you is to seek and represent the views and concerns of the people of Cambridgeshire, and that's obviously all the people of Cambridgeshire. So I just wondered if you wanted to comment on how you thought about how you would address, between the two of you, how you will address that, how you will get through to the hard-to-reach communities who will see you as someone that they can't confide in and they can't trust.
I can answer that easily. Both communities you talk about, I have good contacts with. I'm particularly involved in a community association where a whole number of young Muslim women have now started to use the facility because of my interaction with their local community and with going through intermediaries to find a way through to people who want to use the facility. And as a result, I have a good relationship with young Muslim women in my area. I appreciate that's not the whole of Cambridgeshire, but I do have a track record of reaching out to minority communities. When it comes to the Slovak Roma community, a significant proportion of parents from that community have their children at the Voyager Academy. I also have hosted a number of Roma community events within our community hall, being the only hall that were prepared to work with them at one stage. So just judge me by what I've done, I think, and I completely understand it's always difficult for someone from a particular minority community or from a disadvantaged group trying to address someone in power. I completely understand that. All I can say is that I have full commitment to make sure that I'm as approachable and as accessible as possible, and I do make efforts to try to reach into groups that have been difficult. Bear in mind, in my previous time, I was working with some of the most difficult to reach individuals when I was working on the Prevent agenda in London, and my responsibility was to get access to disaffected young Muslim men who were turning towards terrorist political attitudes within the higher and further education sector. And I was successful in that area, again, going through intermediaries that had access. So I do understand the issue, I understand how difficult it can be, but I do have techniques to get through that so that I can get that level of representation.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Giles.
Thank you. I'll go back to Richard's question about young people, and I'm, if you probably gather, very keen on that aspect of policing and dealing with potentially young offenders. So can you give us an example of your social interaction and actions with young people who are in risk of offending?
Yes, within the school setting, I've been involved as Chair of Governors relating directly with children at risk from exclusion. I've been involved in a summer school using the community group or the CIC, I should say, the community social enterprise I'm involved with as chair, in arson prevention over summer holidays with children aged 10 to 14. In my past, I've been involved in all sorts of interactions with cadets and so on. It's difficult to say specifically how I will be doing that within this role, but then my intention is to be involved with the cadets that are currently at the Thomas Deacon Academy locally and throughout the area in terms of policing and in other uniformed services. But when you talk about challenging children, I'm aware of the interest with central government in PCCs working with children at risk of exclusion in setting up free schools and so on. It's something that I've been through as a trustee of the Compton Academy Trust, looking at the free school system, how that works in mainstream education. It's an interesting area to see if it's something that we can develop.
So follow up on that one. So what are your views then in teaching young boys and girls to fight properly? And I'm thinking about boxing.
Well, I'm delighted that Preston Farm hosts the Police Boxing Club, which is an extremely strong force for good for young boys who have really, well, they are high risk of exclusion, and it brings them back around because it provides them with a sense of danger, it provides them with a sense of responsibility and a set of rules that is well drilled into them by is it Sergeant Baker, I think, but his wife works in the school, that's how I know about it. And also Bill McLeod's Martial Arts Academy that I host in my hall. There was someone who, again, from his own personal circumstances, was not expecting to get any support whatsoever for what he was doing. We gave him a facility. He now has groups of 20 to 30 young boys. Some of those are very challenging young boys, and they have found, through the discipline of martial arts, self-reliance and the code of conduct and friendships, and you just have to see the effect on young people who don't have the code of conduct and see how effective it is. But it seems counterproductive. You teach a child how to fight and they will fight. Well, no. Teach them how to look after themselves with a code of conduct, and it changes the way they think about themselves.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to hear from Mike, if that's okay, from the officers.
No, my only comment was that I don't know if members have got any further supplementary questions now.
I was just coming to that. That seems to be the natural end, unless no one else has indicated that they wish to speak further or ask any other questions.
John, the only other one which I've got out on is given the large geographical area, you're stuck in the frozen north, as we say, in the deep south, conflicts of years. How do you anticipate covering the whole of the area?
You might have seen I'm a keen motorcyclist, nothing's going to keep me from getting around. I will be keeping to the speed limit quite clearly, but the A14 will not be the traffic jam because I'll be able to whiz right down the middle of it.
Okay. Thank you very much. And are there any points that you, Andy Coles, raised that you would like to clarify?
No, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to sit before you to answer questions. I just look forward to your result. Thank you.
Okay, well thank you very much for attending this afternoon, and the panel will now go into deliberation, and we will notify the Commissioner's office tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, yeah, I was just doing that now.
Okay, members. So item 4, under the Local Government Act 1972, exclusion of the press and public. The panel to consider whether to pass a resolution under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972 to exclude the public and for the remainder of the meeting, on the grounds that consideration of the item of business is likely to involve the disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 1 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A. Access to information, exempt information to the Act as amended. Do I have your permission as the panel to deliberate the recommendation of the appointment? Yeah? Okay. Thank you very much. So we will deliberate, and we shall perhaps not even need to move. So we might as well remain here, I guess. That's